Well, you know, most of Congress is home for the 4th of July recess, but several high-profile senators are still working on changes to pull together the 50 votes they need to pass a Senate health care plan.
With tough negotiations on issues like pre-existing conditions, parental health insurance, and slashing Medicaid, it's unlikely that senators will have a health care bill to vote on when they return from the recess. Joining us now is Rob Fuller, co-author of the book From Obamacare to Trumpcare, Why You Should Care. Welcome. So many questions. Folks are really confused. Good for your business, but for all of us, very confusing. Last Friday, as you know, President Trump tweeted that if he didn't have the votes to pass the Republican version of this health care bill, they should just work to repeal now and replace later. What would happen if that was the case?
Well, like much of what goes on, you can't take that literally. A repeal now would eliminate the 30 million people who expanded into Medicaid. It would eliminate the individual exchanges. It would cause just mass chaos. So what if they did take a repeal vote, what would have to happen? We would have to have a future date. So it would be repeal as of January 1, 2020, something like that. Because the immediate rolling back of the Obamacare laws without any replacement would be just mass chaos, and that's not realistic. So then you have to look at whether they would put a symbolic vote up in hopes of giving themselves a year or two to craft whatever legislation they wanted to come afterwards.
I see.
It can be so complicated to really try to break it down, but it's so important. So, for example, there's a lot of talk about how 22 million people could lose health care coverage. However, that doesn't speak to the 70 million already on Medicaid. That includes 2/3 of seniors in nursing homes, an estimated 50% of newborns in America. I mean, these numbers start to get baffling, but if the Senate does get enough votes, what would be the impact of the modified Senate bill on the Medicaid plan? A lot of people are asking about that, Medicaid.
Well, thank you, Lynette. Yeah, they are asking about it, and there isn't really a clear path. We have estimates of what might happen. So the Senate vote would be on a bill that's essentially a tax bill. There is a massive tax cut for basically the wealthiest Americans, and to pay for that tax cut, they have to roll back Medicaid by over $700 billion over a 10-year period. What Obamacare did is expanded eligibility criteria for Medicaid, and in order to save that $700 billion, you have to retract that expansion. You have to reduce the eligibility. So a lot of people who are currently getting Medicaid would have to be taken off the rolls, depending on what the eligibility criteria eventually arrived at were. And the Congressional Budget Office estimates that it would be 22 million people over 10 years would just lose insurance. The other parts of the bill are addressing things that affect us all, which are the insurance rules. The insurance rules are when you can stay on your parents' policy, what pre-existing coverages there might be, and what the age band charges would be. And that's actually a very important one. Obamacare says you can only charge a 60-year-old 3 times what you can charge a 20-year-old. The Senate bill would say that's 5 times. So if you're 59 years old and paying $9,000 a year for insurance, you can expect to pay $15,000 a year for insurance. Wow. Under the Senate bill. And beyond that, the bill has waivers for states. So states then can come into the federal government and say, we want to change the insurance rules further, and they can come up with virtually anything they want to and see if the federal government would approve that. So it would be a very state-by-state analysis of what might happen.
Well, on the Medicaid side of this, this is for folks who have lower incomes, and how specifically does it affect California? We've talked about sort of the big picture, but what about California?
California is especially hard hit monetarily. UCLA economic policy paper the other day estimated it would be $115 billion lost by California over the 10 years on Medi-Cal. Now that is a lot of money, and I'm not sure if California could backfill that money. So California, like other states, would be required to look at their eligibility criteria, and instead of going up to 400% of the poverty level, maybe cut it off at 200 or 300% of the poverty level, which would eliminate a lot of people who are working very hard, but just aren't making the money to pay for individual insurance or group insurance. They don't have it at work. They turn to Medicaid for coverage, and now they'd be cut off those rolls, and that would be throughout California.
You said like 20 million people could be cut, right?
Yes.
And how fast would that happen? Once it's passed, would it be immediate? Would they lose their coverage immediately?
Well, if they repealed and didn't replace, it might be immediate if they didn't have that delay in there. So I think it's a 2021 through 2024 story is when the cuts start taking very serious effect. But there's a lot of states that would try to save money in advance of that to try to smooth out the hit so it wouldn't all just be a cliff that hit us in 2022.
There's nothing like giving folks a benefit from the government and then saying, you know what,
Take it away.
you don't have that after all, we're taking it away. What do you anticipate the effects of that would be?
Well, it really is going to impact all of us. If they take the benefit away, they're still going to get sick. People are still going to have babies. That behavior doesn't change.
Yeah.
And they're still going to go to the hospitals. And hospitals, by federal law, have to see everyone who shows up. And when they provide that coverage, it has to be paid for somehow. As a former hospital administrator, I can tell you how we do it. We sit and we negotiate very hard with Anthem and Cigna and your insurer, and we try to get double or triple from what we really need from Blue Cross, for instance, in order to pay for the uncovered care for people who don't have insurance. When Obamacare came through, the pressure to do that was greatly reduced because now they were at least paying something, and you could kind of make do with the Medicaid coverage for the people who were in the ER. And now you won't be able to if those people lose their Medicaid coverage.
Wow.
Rob, thank you so much for being here. Once again, the book is titled From Obamacare to Trumpcare. Rob Fuller is a partner at Nelson Hardiman, a law firm for healthcare providers. For more information, you can check out the website, TrumpHealthcareBook.com. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
We may be asking you to come in again.
A lot of information.
Anytime,
All
Frank,
right.
anytime.
Thanks very much.